Welcome back to another Tangled In episode about soulful science with Mr. Dr. Miguel. So,
hello, Mr. Dr. Miguel. That sounds quite
Mr.
good.
Dr. Miguel. So we just decided what we're talking about. Well, we had a bit of an idea, but we didn't really both know what we were talking about. We hadn't read the notes. But we're talking about big feelings with ADHD, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And we get a few of those. All
Yes,
of us.
we do, to say the very least. So we wanted to start with like a quote that I found. I don't know whose quote this is, but we don't know whose it is. So whoever it is, thank you. It is a gift and a curse to feel everything so deeply. And I think that really describes the big feelings of ADHD very well. Do you, Dr. Miguel?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think at the moment I'm actually feeling like my intuition is like on steroids. It's like to the point that the other day I'm thinking, I'm walking by the river and there's a lock, like, you know, if you're in England, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're not, it's like this kind of like gates that make the river go into another level. And I'm thinking, what would I do if Finn, my dog, jumped into the river now? It's like if he jumps into the lock, it's like really difficult. It's like meters and meters deep. So I'm literally just turning a corner into the lock and I just hear like the water and like Finn's just jumped, not into the actual lock, but just like past the lock before the gate. But there's a really big gap between the ground and the river. So I had to basically just like get on my belly and like try to get him out of the river because he couldn't get out of the river. And I'm thinking, how did that just happen? And I just keep thinking of like things like, I wonder if like I just bought some trainers yesterday. I wonder if when they're gonna be shipped. And suddenly it's like new email, your trainers are being shipped. And I'm thinking there must be something in there going on, at the moment that is quite freaky. But anyway, I'm digressing because that's that kind of like more intuition. But like I feel things so intensely. And that's again, as you said with the quote, it can be a wonderful thing. It's like there are some songs that make me cry like immediately. It's like I play it, whatever it is, there are a couple of tracks, but there's like a techno track that from 1994 that was my first year in the UK, that it was released when the war in Yugoslavia, it was still going in like, in that kind of like part of the world. It's not a million years ago, but like we seem to have forgotten about, but it was actually quite bad. And it always makes me remember that, and it makes me quite sad. But also, I used to really love the song. They used to play it in the clubs. I used to go completely crazy for it. And then some classical music as well. There's like the Adagio for strings by Barber, the Barber Adagio for strings. That makes me, it's like instantly, like the first 10 seconds, and I'm like sobbing like a baby. And that's just like pure emotion. And I wouldn't want to be another way, to be quite honest. I wouldn't want to be, like some people don't get that kind of reaction. I prefer being like that. But also that means that we are so sensitive to how other people actually fill the room with their emotions as well. So if you're in a room with somebody and they bring something, I don't know, they've got some negativity going on, they've had a bad day or something, you can almost feel it. There's just that kind of like vibration going on. It's kind of like weird to explain, but you can soak it up. I think many of us are quite kind of empathic in a way. So it's quite easy to just like tap into people's emotions and actually just soak them in. And if they happen to be happy vibes, like you and I, we kind of like have happy vibes and we just feed off each other and it's a laugh. But like some people are kind of, going through a rough time or whatever, and then you just pick up that kind of that state that they're in, and that can bring you down. It can be healing for them as well if you're like cheerful and you kind of like, they soak up your own energy as well, and there's that kind of like energy exchange. But there is all of that going on. And a lot of it's down to the brain that I think we're probably going to talk about. But anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I'll let you say
I can
your
listen
thing.
to you all day. But I think it's really important what you started with that intuition, because that is big feelings. And I love that you're having this moment where at the moment you feel like very intuitive, because I think you're in it seems a very good place, doesn't it? You feel very aligned. And I think when we are big feelers and we can be quite intuitive people, I'm sure many people can relate to this as well. I can relate to then all of a sudden all these things, some people call it manifestation, don't they? But like you start attracting everything you think about. Is quite scary actually. because everything you're thinking about just starts to happen. And that's when you're really in tune with yourself and in your feelings, which I think you was describing with the Finn situation as well this week. But the other side of that, like you said, being intuitive to people and other people's energy, I can so relate to that because, like you say, with you, I can feed off your energy. And even if I feel a bit flat some mornings and I speak to you, because that I can really tune into that, it can lift me up quite quickly. But on the flip side, like you said, if someone's in a room and I can feel their negativity or they're in not a good place, equally that can bring us down quite quickly. And I think that's where we can see, and I don't know if you can relate to this, I'm sure you can, but like that people pleasing as well. You know, if I notice that in the past, if someone's, I can really intuitively feel they're not in a good place, and maybe I think there's a bit of RSD might be going on there, or is it, you know, maybe they're just not their self, they're not responding to me in the same way they may have, then that people pleasing side can start to come in as well, or wanting to be the savior and be that person to support them, which I think we can fall into that trap as well quite a lot, can't we? Because we want to help people.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but there's
Absolutely.
a
I
real
think,
positive in that in our jobs, don't you think? Because I think if you can take that into your career of what you know, you in your work and in my work, I think that side of the coin has enabled many of us to be really good in service roles and supporting other people because we're so empathetic to other people's feelings.
yeah, no, I agree. I think we do people place. I think it's also a stress response, the way I see
Yeah.
it, because you have stress responses that are, we always talk about fight or flight. So, fighting this hypothetical tiger that's going to come and get you, or fleeing from it, or fleeing from danger, or fighting that danger. But there's also the fawn response that is kind of just in our case is silencing our feelings, silencing our needs, so our needs are not met, and then we feel uneasy because of that, because we may not be able to articulate that our needs are not being met. But equally, it's easier to actually just do nothing and to smile and pretend that we are fine. So it's just the it's literally the textbook definition of fawning, which is technically it's a trauma response, but I see it as extended into a stress response, because stress can be traumatic. And I think, even though I'm not particularly keen on this kind of a theory of, ADHD is caused by trauma, because I think trauma is a factor, but I don't think it's a cause. But we do have mini traumas with a small t, in a way, not this like massive big traumas necessarily, like abuse or neglect, or, loss and grief and all of these kind of like big things that we tend to think about when trauma kind of like pops up as a word. But like tiny traumas, tiny microaggressions to our integrity as neurodivergent individuals who have needs that may be unique to us. And if we're not able to articulate them, then we're actually not going to feel fulfilled. And the world that we live in makes it difficult sometimes to articulate those needs. And it could be simple things like at work. You might need more time to complete a task, but then you are probably going to say yes to your boss when they say, oh, can you complete this within the hour? And then you're going to be completely stressed out because the hour's passed and you've only done half of the task, and you're doing it really well, but you probably need 2 hours, but you don't have the courage to actually say, look, I'm actually struggling with this for one particular reason, or, whatever it is that's going on in your life, or your executive function that day, or you haven't slept properly, whatever it is. And I'm going to take a bit longer. And in an ideal world, there should be that accommodation for you to be able to do it, because rarely, unless you're a paramedic or something, it's going to be a question of life and death, life or death. It's going to be, doing something in 1 more hour. It's not going to make a company go under. But people get very set in their ways, and then there's a clash, and that's where kind of you get problems in the workplace. And that's just one example. It could be a relationship, so it could be that you're not actually saying what you need. So it's easier to just like smile and pretend that everything is okay, and then that all builds up because we feel so much when we don't express it, and we soak it up like a sponge. There are some moments that we just like explode and we go into this massive big meltdown, and that's particularly for me, it's been a pattern because I've been in a relationship for like 17 years. And it's been a pattern for me. There were a lot more of those meltdowns initially. And like now that I know how things work, it's easier to actually just be brave and have like an uncomfortable conversation when things are starting to build up than to let it build up and then have a massive big argument like, I'm leaving. No, you're not. Yes, I hate you.
Oh my God, I remember those as well in my relationships. It's over.
Exactly. Yeah. And it happens. It happens. You just like basically just accumulate all of that. And that could be at work. It could be like,
Mhm.
that's why we leave. How many times have I left jobs? Because it's like literally, it's like, sometimes it's been, it's just not been me being ADHD. It's me, not wanting to put up with some shit that was like toxic. And that, so it was
Yeah.
warranted for me to leave. But some other times it was just like, it's like things that I didn't like and I haven't been able to say I didn't like them, or sometimes you cannot because you feel that if you say you don't like something, you're going to lose your job anyway. So you might as well just leave. And, it happens. The statistics are there. Neurodivergent people last in jobs a lot less than neurotypical people. You can have a neurotypical person who's in a job for like 20 years quite happily and they don't get bored, but like, we might get bored or we get fired or we just leave or, there's all of those things going on. So it happens in all walks of life, really.
Yeah, and I think what you said there is so important. Like, well, first of all, I think it's a lot to do, obviously, like you said, is the nervous system and that thing of feeling safe,
Yeah.
which I think with ADHD, living with ADHD is a constant feeling of not feeling safe
Uh-huh.
and actually trying to find ways constantly to feel safe, which when we're unaware of that's what's going on, I think that's where we have, like you say, either responded with like people pleasing or we've gone for advice or it's all a way of actually just self-medicating that feeling of not feeling safe, and we don't know why we don't feel safe in that environment. And I
Yeah.
actually think like where you said about suppressing, I can so relate to that. And even at the moment, like there was things work related that we're building up. I was suppressing, and then all of a sudden it will all come out in one go because you've suppressed something, not said anything, and then it can come out in either an outburst or emotional outburst or anger. It can come out in a reaction of like, I'm just going to quit this project. I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to quit this relationship. And actually, the importance of that, talking about this subject, I wonder how many of us in our community have walked out on something that maybe deep down, like obviously that intuitive feeling could be there and it could, could be the right decision. But actually, how many of us have walked out on things like friendships, relationships, jobs, you name it, projects, because we have suppressed how we're really feeling, that if we was able to communicate that in a way throughout, it would have ended in an impulsive decision to just walk out because of the outburst.
Definitely. And then you think, okay, well, it's life. And then, you learn from those mistakes. But then I was thinking about that just the other day, like I had it was a short relationship. So it was just like less than a year, but it was really, really intense. And then I was thinking about the guy only a couple of years ago. And it turns out that he actually died of COVID. And it just popped
Oh
into
my
my head. And I
God.
thought, I'm just going to look him up. And I just found that he died like 2 months before. And it was like late in COVID as well. It was just like in the beginning. And it made me sad because it was a really full on relationship. You just felt like all the feelings all at once, like those that are just like, really overpowering. And he was a nice guy, but it was just like so full on. And I think if I know what I know now, it's like, it's life. You learn from those situations and they are there for a reason. So you probably get those chances to experience things in a relationship. So when the other one comes, kind of like you are better at dealing with that situation and you don't fall into the same traps or
Yeah.
you don't make the same mistakes again. I was thinking, what would have happened? Again, like I'm happy in my relationship, but you always have this like, how would life be different if I had stayed in that relationship? What would have happened? Or if I had stayed in Spain or, whatever, sometimes you think about those things. I'm thinking, what would have happened if if I had stayed with Nick? Like, oh my God, like, what would have happened? Because it was quite a bonkers, like, relationship. So, but yeah, and I think I did do a lot of fawning in that relationship. So,
Can you
and
explain what fawning is for those that
yeah,
might
so
not know, actually?
basically it's like you have the fight and flight. So you have the,
Hmm.
in fight, you have a situation where you experience your nervous system is picking up signals and it's letting you know that you don't feel safe. And your nervous system is got lots of different branches. So people talk about the vagus nerve, as if it's just all of that is the nervous system. That's part of this parasympathetic nervous system, is the main part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calm down kind of like branch of the autonomic nervous system, which again is like a branch that does things on autopilot. You don't need to think about them. It's like breathing and your heart beating and your skin cooling up and down and all of those kind of things. There are things that you don't need to think about. Your muscles moving in your stomach so you can get nutrients from food and things like that. And then there's the sympathetic nervous system, which is the go, 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 alert kind of branch of that part of the nervous system. And in all, then they pick up signals from inside of your body. So there's this kind of interoception. So there is that you learn about how your gut is feeling and you get used to the feelings. And then you know that you need to go to the loo, or you pick up signals from your bladder and you need to go to the toilet. And, you pick up maybe like if you're a bit more spiritual, like intuitive feelings as well. And that's kind of like more the enteric nervous system, which is another branch of the nervous system that is in your gut. And it kind of like branches out throughout the gut and it picks up information from your bacteria in your gut and then sends it to the brain, and so that your
Is that why
brain
we
knows
have
what's
gut
going on.
feelings? Is that like
Yeah,
when we say gut feelings? That would come from that. What is that called again?
exactly.
Sorry, did you say?
Yeah, so it's got enteric.
Enteric.
Yeah, it's
Enteric.
the enteric nervous system, and they're all connected. So they're kind of like there's this nervous system, there's the brain and the spinal cord, and the autonomic nervous system. So there's the central nervous system, which is the spinal cord and the brain. There's the peripheral nervous system, which is the autonomic nervous system, and the somatic nervous system. And the somatic nervous system is basically picking up signals from the outside. So if it's cold, then you realize it's cold because you've got sensors in your skin. If it's hot, the same, or whatever. If it's wet, you get signals from the environment. And then you also push out motor signals from the brain, which basically means you can move your fingers and your legs, you can walk and you can be very precise with your fingers if you're painting or, so all of that is part of the nervous system as a whole. And then when the whole of the nervous system, your brain, through neurotransmitters and hormones and all of these kinds of equipment that it has to pick up, imagine, now I'm talking to you, I'm having to pick up signals of when you're talking, so I stop talking. Is it cold? So
Which we don't both do very well.
You're right. Is it cold? Do I need a jacket? Do I need to close the door in the garden? Is my dog safe? So do I need to do something with him? All of my nervous system is like analyzing all of this and making sure that I'm safe as well. There's not somebody like behind me with a knife. So all of that is kind of like being taken into account every second of the day. And then sometimes you just don't feel safe, and the thing to do is to fight. It's literally you just feel that the way out of the danger is just to defend yourself with intensity. So that doesn't have to be physical. So we think of fighting as like, punching somebody, but it could be just outburst of emotion. In ADHD, it typically is irritability. It's feeling aggy, it's like you just don't know, but it's like something that is not quite right. You just take it out on your
Yeah, and
partner
you can't
because
shake it off. And you're like, it's just
exactly.
got to
And
come
it's
out
just,
of me in
yeah, and
some
that's
way.
also a learning curve for the person that you're living with or that you work with, because they might think, oh God, she's so stroppy. It's like, she's like always like
Yeah.
aggy and like, she's having a go at me or like she's just nagging. And it could be many things. It could be that sometimes as well, the medications actually slow that down or like they mellow that down and they make you less like that. But sometimes if like medications, especially in women with the cycle, they don't work the same all through the
No,
month.
I've noticed it
Sometimes
with
you get days that they work better. Sometimes it depends on your estrogen levels, progesterone levels, the phase of the cycle. So it could be that a particular day you're just quite hyper on the meds, and it could be actually you get a bit more irritate if you have more irritability, so you have this need to let it go and it comes out as a fight basically with somebody.
So is that what fawning is, the fight? Like, is when
No,
you're
so fight. So
outburst?
it's basically, I'm explaining, so it's how it fits in the kind of like stress response. So you have the fight, that is the
Yeah.
irritability, you feel cornered, it could just be in your head. And then you have this shield, basically, which could be just words, it could be an attitude, it could be an actual aggression, in some cases.
Yeah.
So, but basically, you're putting up a shield for your tender parts inside, basically, just protecting your safety. And you have the flight, which is basically escaping danger. And we do that a lot because a lot of ADHD are non-confrontational. So you have people who maybe thrive on the confrontation. That's a source of dopamine, and that on a
Yeah, I
day you
know
might want to do
lots
that.
of people like that.
You pick up an argument, yeah, just because it's kind of, it gives you a bit of drama, and then that the drama gives you a bit of dopamine, and then you feel exhausted afterwards. But
Yeah.
you got what you needed. You needed some dopamine, and you
I
got
always
it.
say, like, there's no like nothing more entertaining than a negative story. So even if it's in your head, you're ruminating, but if even more so if it's in real life, it's like a
Well,
drama. It's like
exactly.
EastEnders. It's like watching
Yeah,
EastEnders, you
yeah,
know.
of course, yeah. It's like, I was not just a
Dun
slag. I
dun
was a
dun.
total slag.
Yeah,
Get out of my pub.
there we
So,
go.
so there is that, and you feel the need to move to safety, and that's flight, basically, just
Yeah,
fleeing. And in ADHD, what I see that as is perfectionism, is busyness, because you hide behind your work. It's like you try to get a meeting with somebody, and it's
guilty.
like such drama because it's like, oh my god, I can talk to you like next Monday from like 3:30 to like 3:45, and I'm thinking, oh my god, you're just that busy. Oh, is that
That's me.
So sometimes you build that as a as a shield. It's basically a protection mechanism
Yes.
for your what are you craving inside that is not being met, and then you feel it with busyness, with overthinking. Your nervous system is basically in
Anything to feel
discomfort.
safe.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's where the food, we spoke about food last week, and I've started working with a dietitian just this week to sort out some eating disorder stuff. And she said stuff like, eating disorder stuff, but she said the first stage is actually like that safety, finding safety and security, because that is another way, isn't it? Obviously, with the food that we was talking about, where you'll
Of
eat
course.
anything to feel safe, like that in that moment could be food, it could be anything.
Exactly. And that's why it's there's no point. It's like, with food, I think it always, as a little kind of like aside, it's always good to think that life is long, and that it's not just like all about like today and this week or just before you go on holiday. That is not,
Yes.
you've got many opportunities to get it right. So if what
It's
feels
so
safe
true.
this week is to have ready-made lasagna from S and put it in the microwave and have that, because that's what actually makes you feel safe. There's nothing wrong. And the worst thing you can do is then to go on Instagram and feel bad because Miss blah blah whatever nutritionist galore is telling you that you need to have like 20 different colors a day and like so many different fibers and so many grams of protein, and then you feel like a failure. So that could be something that you aspire to when you're actually feeling safer. But if what feels safe now is having that followed by a bit of like milk chocolate, well, just have that, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, and acknowledge that that's what your body needs, and find balance so it doesn't become like you always eat like that. But I think we have this all or nothing thinking as well a lot in ADHD, and we just feel, oh my god, if I have that one day because I feel like a duvet day. I feel like watching Netflix all day and just having this like hot lasagna with a bit of with a hot cocoa afterwards. It feels like, oh, if I do that, I'm just gonna do that every day, and I'm gonna be a failure. You can do that a couple of days because you feel like doing that, and then start
Yeah.
building a healthier habit later.
I think that does relate to it as well, though. You're saying about our emotions, like when we do that with people, so it comes out. So, say we find safety in food, but also find safety in that moment by an outburst, for example, or perfectionism or people pleasing. I think we then, if we've reacted in a way we're not proud of, we can also do the all nothing thinking, can't we? And say, well, I'm just that person. I'm a person that just lashes out. I'm a bad person. I don't deserve. I know I've thought about it before when I was in relationships. Like, I shouldn't be in a relationship. I don't deserve to be. I'm too up and down. I'm hard to handle. We can have that all or nothing story about ourselves as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, if
Completely.
we have this one reaction, we sort of wipe ourselves out to say, well, that's it.
Yeah, and
You
it's
know?
quite difficult to say because sometimes, like we can have 100 thoughts in our head at the same time, or we can
Mhm.
have 100 feelings at the same time. We can be sad about something,
Yeah.
but like happy about something else, excited. We might feel irritable about something. It's all happening. It's quite difficult to actually just like break it all down and like write it and, and journal about it. And because it's just so much. So sometimes we just freeze, which is again another response to stress, another response to the environment. Our nervous system is just picking up so much shit around us that it's just literally overwhelmed, and it's just easier to do nothing. And that's another stress response that again is kind of like more your typical stress responses are fight or flight. And then, you have trauma responses that you have many. But I think for me, there are really four stress responses in ADHD. There's the fight and flight, but there's the freezing as well, which is, again, for us, procrastination is freezing because you just don't know what to do. So you do nothing, or you end up doing something completely irrelevant for that particular situation. You need to finish a dissertation, or you need to finish a project for work that is urgent, but you're doing something completely different. And then you're putting that off because you don't feel safe and you feel overwhelmed. And then you want the adrenaline hit at the end of that because the deadline is so close that it's going to give you that little push. And then you know that you end up building this coping mechanism that can be quite unhealthy, in that it takes you out of the problem quite quickly, and you could rely on that and it becomes the norm. But you can also feel quite burnt out as a result, because that's not how things are supposed to happen. So it's good to be it's good to be aware at least of those patterns, as opposed to just want to fix them immediately, because sometimes it can take years. But
Mhm.
the awareness is really, really important. And decision paralysis as well. So it's basically just like, you make no decision, and it could be something tiny. It could just be like literally an email comes through. And like for me, it happens if I'm in the middle of something and an email comes through and I think, oh shit, that email, I need to reply to it. And then it just freezes me from actually finishing what I'm doing, because I feel like I need to reply to the email before I can continue. And it just gets like jumbled in my
Yeah.
head. So yeah, and that's
I
all
think
freezing.
freezing, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like where the procrastination can come in, which can be. Do you know what? It's so funny because when I'm doing my workouts in the morning, where I feel like at the moment I'm quite in my feelings and I'm like distracted by other things, I actually notice like when I'm working out, and I don't notice as soon as I do it, but it's like a few minutes will pass. I'm like, why have you stopped moving? But I'm actually in freezing because I've thought about something quite emotionally, big for me at the moment, and I'm distracted by this story about this emotion and what's going on. And I've noticed that I've actually stopped in the midst of my workout. Like my body has literally stopped. Do you know what I mean?
And
I'm just like,
that's really interesting, because we tend to think about ADHD as a brain thing. And like, if you look at the narrative of ADHD, and like during my doctoral degree, I did like some qualitative research training. And some of the things that I did was analyzing sentiment in social media. So
Mhm.
literally at the time I was doing it, like Twitter was like quite important for this kind of thing. So you pick up a theme, and then you analyze what people are saying about it on Twitter. And then you kind of like, using this software, you analyze what the sentiment is.
yeah,
And if we were to do that thing on ADHD, then you come up with keywords that define what people are talking about. Most of what people talk about ADHD is like brain based, it's cognition based. It's like, RSD is like brain. It's, I don't know. It's about things, cognitive processes, brain situations.
yeah,
It's all brain,
all
brain,
up
brain, brain,
here.
brain. Yeah, all up here. We don't talk about the body, and the fact that the body is part of the whole machinery of the nervous system. And like,
Definitely.
and
I think ADHD is nervous system. Like, I feel like if we can manage our nervous system,
completely,
we can manage our ADHD. Like, I think that's the key.
body as well. Why is it that,
Yeah,
another thing that comes up a lot is like, oh, exercise is really good for ADHD. Why? Because it brings you back to the body and it takes you out of your head.
exactly.
So it's,
Embodiment.
and exactly. So there is all of that embodied neuroscience that I feel is really important to talk about, and the embodied responses, and your freezing actually making your body stop. That's the
Yeah,
embodiment of that emotion. You're kind of like, that emotion that is like up here somewhere is actually permeating throughout the whole of your system. So it's making your body stop. And that happens a
exactly.
lot in ADHD. It just like freezes us. It's kind of like, it has a we can feel it in our body. It's almost like, we can feel it in our gut as well. That's why a lot of us have got like
Gut issues.
IBS, gut
Yeah.
issues, intolerances.
It's like a shutdown, isn't it? It's like it's like your body shuts down in that moment. And actually, like what you're talking about, we normally relate to ADHD being, needing something to slow us down in that, in our moments, which obviously when we're shutting down physically, there's a lot going on up here. But actually, how do you continue to move forward? That's a bit more like, because when we're in procrastination or we're shut down, you hear a lot of people saying, I couldn't get off the sofa. Like, how much of that is because you're embodying your ADHD is actually sending you into freeze mode because of your emotions that you're feeling, as opposed to slowing us down? Do you know what I mean? It's like we need to slow up here down to get us moving physically in that moment.
Yeah, or you can see it the other way. You can see getting into the brain through the body. And that's why a lot of what I think is really beneficial is simple things that you don't need to go and do a workout in the gym necessarily. You can do something at home that you could just use your body for. So it could just be stretching. It could just be a mindfulness of a body area. It could just be something that we talked about before the episode. It could just be literally just a grounding exercise that allows you to get out of your head and into the environment we'll talk about later. So it's not necessarily the body, but you can do it in the body as well. So you can do a mini body scan. You could do like a body scan where you can actually just sit down, and if you want to, you can close your eyes and you can visualize your hands and your feet and your calves, and all of this has been done for millennia as in different traditions. You have yoga nidra, for example, which is like yogic sleep or relaxation, and it's a body scan with eyes closed, and there's a guide to do it and all the rest of it. But there are variations of it that this progressive muscle relaxation, PMR, is actually a technique that is quite similar to a yoga nidra, but it's more shorter, and there's been a lot of evidence on how it helps things like fibromyalgia, which again, a lot of people with ADHD have, and so on. So it's basically just making that connection between the body or the mind and the brain, and not just expecting that, because I see a lot of podcasts and people talking on socials and so on, and and I think, okay, you're talking about RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, and you're talking about how to deal with it, but what you're talking about is so cognitive based.
Logic. It's that bit logical, isn't it?
Yeah,
as well? It's as if we've got like a chance to do that in that moment. I mean, let's just think logically right now while I'm in RSD.
I know, and I'm thinking, okay, so you've just gone on about RSD and how it's like, it feels like quite visceral and blah blah blah. So it's like, you feel it, and it's overwhelming and everything else. But then you're kind of like trying to rationalize how you get out of that, and I'm thinking the last thing you want to say to somebody with ADHD is like, can you think any more than what you're already thinking? When you already have like
you just want to chuck your... I've actually used to think, get this brain out of my head and swap it with someone else in a moment of RSD. That's what I want to do. I don't want to think with it anymore. I want to chuck it away.
Well, exactly. And I'm thinking, how am I going to just like have a chat with my brain and say, sorry, hi love, you're having a bit of a moment.
Sorry to interrupt, but
I know. And I just think, sorry, is it just me, or is it like is nobody else thinking about this? Because I'm thinking the last thing you want is just to like have this like a conversation with your brain when you're having this like meltdown moment. And
sorry to interrupt, but are you sick and tired of trying to untangle the chaos in your ADHD brain alone? I hear you. I know firsthand that it is not easy, which is why I have my own ADHD coach and community by my side. And you can too. Imagine having someone there guiding you and supporting you through the chaos and cheering you on every single step of the way. You don't have to go it alone anymore. For more information, head over to untangledco.com and book your free discovery call with me. In case someone's listening, they don't know what RSD is, because I think that's the thing. What does RSD feel like to you?
Well, our RSD is literally is like again, it's kind of like a way to signal a lack of safety, and it's located in certain areas of the brain that are quite primal. So the brain's developed from the inside out. So you have like areas that are common to all kind of higher level animals, like like birds and reptiles and mammals and so on. And it's kind of you have the cerebellum, which is at the back of the brain, and it does a lot of other things, but it helps with movement. And then you have the brainstem, which is almost like the continuation of the spine, and the spinal cord into the brain. And that helps with loads of things like regulation of sleep, regulation of movement, regulation of pain, quite primal functions as well. And within there are certain areas that are in charge of regulating pain, regulating time as well, like circadian rhythms, like the day and night rhythm. But they, particularly in RSD, the interesting thing is that the same areas that control pain, they control physical pain, but also emotional pain. So it seems that in ADHD, that RSD, the areas that control RSD in the brainstem are heightened. So they get more blood flow.
So it's
They
from the
get more.
brainstem that this is happening.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. People always say, won't they? Well, no one likes rejection. Like people always say that to me. So why, everyone's sensitive to rejection. So actually, the science behind RSD is that the areas that feel pain in our body are what, more sensitive, or what
They are
happens in an
heightened.
ADHD?
So they basically
Heightened.
just think, yeah, exactly. So it's not more about like if you actually took a look at the actual structure of the ADHD brain, you may not see actual differences compared to a non-ADHD brain, but it's the function. So it's basically what areas of that brain that might look identical to a non-ADHD brain are getting more blood flow at that particular time when an intense emotion is going on, in that case, rejection. So basically, you're going to get more blood flow into the areas of the limbic system. So basically, the amygdala, which is an area that gets blood flow, and then it kind of gets it rings the alarm bells for.
So we're getting more blood flow in these areas when someone without
Exactly.
ADHD
Yeah,
isn't.
without getting too technical, you get blood flow into areas of, it's as simple as you get more nutrients and more blood flow into areas that do something in particular. And what those areas in particular do is emotion regulation, particularly emotions that are to protect your safety. So again, the amygdala and the limbic system in general is linked with the fight or flight response. Why? Because it's the primal response. It's kind of if again, go back 200,000 years and you didn't have to worry so much about being rejected on social media or like not getting likes,
No.
you have to
Oh
worry
my
about
God,
like,
it's like a constant, that's what I mean. Everywhere we look, it's that constant bit of, risk of being
yeah,
rejected all the time
or
on an app,
getting. Yeah,
dating app.
or not even that. It's like what we were talking about the other day. It's like constant hustling, the feeling that
Oh, yeah.
you're not good enough because you're not doing enough because Rose is posting 10 videos a day and I haven't posted
I
in a week.
wish.
And I think, oh my God, I'm like, I'm so slack. I'm not posting enough. And part of me is
Oh,
thinking,
it's
oh,
horrible.
I'm not bothered about posting. I'm thinking, oh, I may be missing opportunities because I'm not posting so people don't know about me. And then when you're self-employed, how does that reflect on my income? And, so all of these things,
And it's all a
200,000 years
made up
ago.
thing in your head. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A lot of it is just kind of like pointless chatter. And then 200,000 years ago, you didn't have to worry about that. You had to worry about making it alive to your cave in the evening after chasing an antelope or something and like having
That
something
sounds
for your
more
tea.
fun, to be quite honest.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like surviving that risk. You didn't have all of this finesse of like feelings that most of them are actually kind of like made up feelings of 2025. So you
No.
have this, but they feel very real, and they feel so real that they're actually the same parts of the brain that deal with that physical pain that are
Pain,
involved in things like
yes.
migraines, for example, that many people with ADHD get. I get them. Fibromyalgia, I've had ups and downs with fibromyalgia. Many people do. unexplained chronic pain throughout the body that may not have a label, but we struggle to get it diagnosed. IBS, that is hypersensitivity in the gut. Like all of those, they need to go through these channels in the brain that process those feelings, and those are the same channels that process the rejection when we get the rejection. So that's why it actually feels quite painful to get rejected.
Because we say, I mean, that's what, you know, in a personal point of view, how would you describe RSD as well as a person? Because I know myself and many others, we say that it feels physically painful in the moment, right? Like that's what people report.
And it's absolutely right.
That's science behind that, which I never even knew till just now.
And that influences the kind of molecules that you're going to produce in the brain at that particular time as well, and the kind of foods that you might want as well to soothe, or the kind of behaviors that you might want to engage in to soothe yourself. Because if you feel that kind of pain, you might want and again, everybody's different, and in here we're starting to blend the neurobiology with behavior and learned behaviors, and everybody's different, and we all have different life stories and trajectories. So, you know, but there are patterns as well. And you see in the science that is published that, you know, it doesn't mean that everybody with ADHD is going to face issues with addiction, but we tend to find it easier to get kind of addicted to behaviors, Exactly. Well, and the behaviors can be, you know, jumping from one relationship to another, because we learned that, and it becomes kind of like, you know, you need that prop. It could be substance use, it could be alcohol, it could be, you know, it could be over exercising. Some people just find that, you know, they just need to exercise all the time because that's what gets them the dopamine, and then they end up going to the gym like 3 hours every day or something. So they go overboard onto that.
But that's the thing. I think that's exactly how my life has always been. It's like either relationship hopping, which was the first thing, then it was drink, you know, drugs. And now I would say that feeling of being unsafe has gone into work and potentially food right now. But if I could sum up what I think RSD feels like, I think it's paranoia, imposter syndrome, and a constant feeling in that moment that something terrible is going to happen. You're not actually quite sure what it even is, but like, that something bad is going to happen in that moment, and it just feels physically painful for me as a person. And having that science behind what you just said, it just puts so much validation behind what you're experiencing, because like you say, in the moment, as the person dealing with it, it feels so real. Yet however you deal with it in that moment, whether it's to go and grab a vice, whether you have an outburst, the shame after an episode of RSD is huge for people. And people, you know, because people looking in from the outside are like, what the hell was that about? Why are you texting me 100 times to ask me for reassurance? Why have you just had an emotional outburst over the fact that, you know, the other day at the airport when I got asked to empty, you know, I was 200 pounds over in my case and I had an absolute meltdown for an hour. I was there unpacking, crying, repacking, and everyone's looking at me as to say, what the hell is going on here? But I was having that moment of like, you know, an RSD episode of, oh my God, I'm not going to get on my flight. They think I'm stupid. I've done all this stuff. And I just had this massive outburst. And after I calmed down, I was like, oh my God, what was the need to react like that? Do you know what I mean? So I think having this science behind all of this stuff, it helps you get rid of that story that I'm crazy or I'm unstable or, you know, all of this stuff that people are now, you know, going through.
Yeah, there is all of that. And then there is also, finally, if we get into explaining what the actual fawning is about, so like FAWWN, you know, 50 minutes in, we can finally like tell you about, sorry, we've taken a little longer than we expected to explain what fawning is, but
I still thought it was the thing.
Fawning.
What is fawning?
Yeah, so you basically you're blending to belong, because you're craving to belong in a situation, and that's another thing that happens a lot with us ADHDers. We want to belong in a group. We crave that kind of like belonging, and sometimes it can be the right group, but sometimes it can be the wrong group, and we do it for like the wrong reasons. You know, it could be like we get dopamine from it. We we just getting needs that we think are met, and they may not be, but we kind of, they feel like that at the time, and we go with the wrong kind of like crowd at the time, but we kind of like, we cannot help it. And again, that's the learning in life, I think, is all kind of like a valid experience, and then we get the learning from it. It's people pleasing, a lot of people pleasing, and we've done this 100 times,
So this is fawning. This is actually
fawning.
fawning.
Yeah,
It's
so
people
basically
pleasing and trying
people
to belong.
pleasing, trying to self-silencing, over apologizing. Sorry. Oh, I do apologize.
Oh my God, I used to say
It's
that.
like,
Sorry for existing.
well, exactly. Yeah, it's like you're writing an email and like you have Grammarly turned on, and it keeps saying, "Do you want to sound more confident?" No, stop it. I don't want to sound more confident.
I hate Grammarly. I just switched it off because I hate it so much. I was getting RSD from my Grammarly.
I know. It needs to bore off. But like there is all of that. And I think it's that again, it's a nervous system strategy to, I think when connection, we humans need connection. We are social beings. And when connection feels at risk, then we will do something to protect it, because we think, okay, I'll feel safer if I belong in a tribe. And at the moment, I'm not being received with like open arms. What can I do for the tribe to embrace me? And then you're basically just gonna smile and you're gonna say yes to everything, because that's what's going to get you through the gates of the tribe, and you're gonna feel safe being part of a group that's going to protect you. And that group might just be one person, it could just be your partner, and you just say yes to everything, and then you resent it. It could be, and you self-silence because you have a met needs. That could be just a very reasonable adjustment that you need at work, but then you don't feel worthy sometimes to actually ask for it. That's another matter as well with ADHD, as we may not feel worthy of something enough to actually ask for it. There's the over apologizing is a typical Fawn response. And
God,
again,
I
it's
feel like
just,
that's all I've ever done.
yeah, so I think, and I'm very much kind of, and it's funny because when I, like in Spain, like we obviously have, in Spanish, like sorry and thank you, but we don't overuse it as much as we do in English, because everything is like please and thank you all the time. You can just like be polite with tone or whatever without being so thank you and
saying
please.
the words.
Exactly. So I think sometimes when I say sorry, like, in Spanish, it just sounds like I'm overdoing it, because it's like Spanish
What
people
you
are thinking,
sorry
what are you so
about?
sorry about? Exactly.
Yeah, I've had people say that to me all the time. What are you sorry about? But like, I actually realized that when I went on silent retreat and I wasn't allowed to speak, how much I said sorry and thank you and all these stuff, because every time I went to do it, I had to think, oh, you can't talk. So I actually had the biggest realization in silence of how much we say that, like Fawning, for example, like sorry, every time I bumped into someone or I stood out the way, like it's just, you just notice it so much when you're not, you have to think about every time you say it or go to
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah. So I think it would be
That's
good
fawning.
Fawning. Yeah. So I think it would be good to actually know what do you do about all of these things, because I think it's like,
Yeah.
we've explained a
Well,
lot of what they are, but I think how do we go, for me, I think it's really important to go back to the body and actually not try to rationalize it. So I'm not going to say, oh, and then you do this, you think about, no, don't think, whatever you do, don't think about how to come out of that situation, because you're already overthinking. That's part of the
I love that
problem.
advice.
You're fighting, you're fleeing, you're fawning, or you're freezing, because your thoughts are too much already, and the thoughts are what are driving the emotions in the first place. So, don't think yourself out of the situation. Try to bring yourself back into the body. It could be something as simple as breath, which is quite trendy at the moment. Everybody talks about like breathing and breath work and blah blah blah. It's kind of like, but it could be very simple. You don't need to do a course that's going to cost you thousands of pounds. It could be just something simple that's evidence-based to reduce catastrophizing. And you talked about catastrophizing and thinking about the worst possible scenario, that something's going to happen that's awful when you feel RSD, or the world is going to come to an end, and everybody in my family is going to get killed by this hurricane. And you just think of the worst possible thing that's going to happen. And it's quite dramatic and it's overwhelming and you cannot control it. Well, think about breathing in a way that has been shown with evidence and in clinical trials to help you with rumination and that kind of overwhelm.
Does box breathing fit into that or not?
So box breathing, not as much, but it helps in the sense that it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, so it's going to calm you down. But
Yeah.
this particular technique has been seen to help with catastrophizing, with rumination, which is breath counting. And
Is that extended breath? Is that like extended exhales or
no,
just
you don't
counting?
need to control the breath at all. And
Right.
all you
Okay.
need to do is to find a quiet spot. You can close your eyes if you feel more comfortable closing them. You can keep them open if you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes. But ideally, you close your eyes. You don't need to control the breath, as in, feel
I'm gonna do it now.
anything or extend it, or it's going to slow down naturally as you do it. But you don't need to do anything artificial with it. Just let it flow, and you literally just feel the inhale and feel the exhale. And you count on the exhale, you count to 10. So you basically inhale and you exhale. It could be through the nose and out of the mouth, whatever, ideally it's through the nose and out of the
Yeah, I like
mouth,
breathing
but
through it.
as
Quite
long as
hard for
it's
people
not,
to do it first, isn't it? I think I love that now because of yoga, but I think it's quite difficult to do through the
yeah,
nose,
as
isn't
long
it, for
as you
people?
are mindful of not doing it through the mouth, because if you're doing it through the mouth, that's when you're actually activating more the sympathetic nervous system, because that's what happens
Yeah.
when you're trying to get big gulps of air into your lungs when you're trying to escape danger. So if you are mindful just to try and use the nose as much as possible, and if you happen to just do it through the nose, inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose, and with the mouth shut, that's fine as well. Don't overthink it. Try, just do
Don't
it.
think. I love this. Step 1, don't think.
Don't think.
Step
And
2, count your breath, but
count
don't
basically,
change
and
it.
you count to 10. So basically, you count to 10, and you do like 1, exhale, inhale, exhale, 2, inhale, exhale, 3,
Oh, so
and if
you're
you
so you're
get lost,
counting the amount of times you just
exhale.
breathe in and out. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Okay.
you count the exhale. You count every time you breathe out. You count. If you get lost, you go back to 1. So you start with 1 again.
Yeah, we did
And
this on Silent Retreat. That was the first meditation we did, actually, was counting.
yeah, it's a basic Buddhist meditation, but
Yeah.
so they do it in the Buddhist tradition. But also, it goes back thousands of years in kind of Vedic traditions. But it's got a lot of evidence behind it for
Catastrophizing.
rumination. So basically,
Wow.
rumination is basically thinking of worst possible scenarios, thinking about negative thoughts, all of those kind of like looping thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and it puts you into the body. It's easy, it's free, and you don't need to do it for a long time. But ideally, you could do it for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then maybe like build a practice. Because with all of these things, if you just do it the one time, you're not putting enough of a prop in there for the brain to think that it needs to reorganize itself around that new habit.
No.
So if you want to do this thing, people talk about neuroplasticity, and you want to rewire your brain, then you need to do this regularly.
Regularly.
How regularly? Is it like twice a day? Well, no, it could be like twice a week. Yes, as long as it's kind of like
Start
regularly
small.
enough. So you think, okay, I'm doing 3 minutes, 3 times a week. It's super easy. I can do it anywhere. I can do it on the tube, on the way to work. I can do
Yeah,
it
that's what
while
I
I'm
do.
lying in bed before going to sleep. I can do it in the toilet at work because I get stressed out and I go and like have a minute to myself and like, I like close the door and nobody sees me. I can do it in the gym. You can do it anywhere at the end of the day. And you can
That's
even
what I
do it
love about
walking.
breath, though. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I do a lot of my breath work walking. And another thing that I like, which I think is good to share, is EFT or tapping, because I found with ADHD, like having, which is where you tap on your meridian points and you can say statements, can't you?
Yeah.
But the statements don't have to be positive at first. You can start with how you're just feeling. So a bit like what you said with the breath, like you don't change your breath, but actually you meet yourself where you're at and you're tapping on these meridian points, which is like what, acupuncture does. And you're just saying how you feel. And sometimes I'm like, I'm so fucking stressed right now. Or I just want to, chuck my laptop out the window or whatever it is that I'm saying. I just say what's coming into my brain and then I just keep tapping. And all of a sudden it just really calms you down. But I
Well,
like it because I'm doing something with my hands and it gets me off of ruminating,
Exactly. It puts you out of your it takes you out of your head and into the body again. So I think that that's actually really good. And another thing is just humming as well. So there's like
I
humming
love humming. Yeah.
is again, so you can do that's what people
Oh,
do
oh.
but you can do as well
Hasn't got to be perfect, Toms.
it can be like Isla Bonita, at the end of the day, you
Mm.
can do
And why does that work? 'Cause they call it the bright. What breath is that called? The bright. I can never say it properly. We call it in yoga the bee breath, but I can't remember. There's a name for it.
yeah, it's as the bee breath, isn't it? So bumblebee.
And why does that work? Is it a vibration thing?
It's the vibration stimulates the. I've got a silly puppy here looking at me. Go to your bed. And the vibration stimulates the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is
Okay.
the main cable, so to speak, in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming part of the autonomic nervous system. So basically, by doing that, you're promoting calm. So basically, but you're promoting calm throughout your body. So it's not just a mind thing. So you're just not like, you're not thinking about calm. You're actually bringing calm by sound vibration into the areas that the vagus nerve goes into, which it goes deep into the gut and, all down to the sacrum. So it's basically just like almost like a sound bath
I
all
was just going to say to
through.
you, because I
Yeah.
love sound baths. I have them regularly. Is that why that works for me? Because I love sound bath.
With humming, literally, what's happening is that you're sending vibrations through your vagus nerve to all of the areas that nerve actually goes into, and it goes all the way from the cranium, basically from it's a cranial nerve, so it goes from the brain into the sacrum, so all through the spine, basically all through like a bit of at the front and a bit at the back. And so it's basically just sending this sound bath of, let's say, healing vibrations throughout your body. And now if you then on top of that assign a meaning to that humming, and and you think of as something healing, or and you do it like that, then that can actually be, it's probably going to be better for you than if you don't think of anything. But literally, you don't need to think of anything, because the vibration itself is what
It will
is
do the
healing,
work.
as opposed to
Yeah.
try to think. Because the moment that you start trying to think, oh, I'm going to think of positive vibes, you're thinking. And I'm thinking, stop thinking. Do not think. Do not think yourself out of the problem. Just bring yourself into the body, bring yourself onto the outside. And we can talk about more things in other episodes about how to take yourself out of the head
And into the
onto the
body.
outside, on into the body, but literally try not to think so much. And it sounds a bit like counterintuitive, because you think, oh, it's the neuroscientist like telling me not to think. It's like, shouldn't I be thinking about how to stimulate this part of the brain, or how do I stimulate my executive function by doing this? Or like, no, stop it, because it's by thinking about it, you're not going to do it. You need to do something that will take you out, that will have an impact on that particular part of the brain through the outside, as opposed to try to think into it.
Yeah. I think this is all great tools. And it sounds to me like these are, because I always like to look at, strategies that for different points. So there's the strategies when you're in it, there's the strategies after it's happened, but also there's the strategies which we eventually want to get to, is like prevention. I always say, like, and I think that's where coaching can help, or has helped me, is the mindset stuff with the thinking side of things is more the stuff that happens before RSD has happened. It sort of give me awareness, of where's the evidence of what RSD actually is. So sometimes when I'm about to go into an RSD episode, then I've been able to coach myself out of it before it's spiraled. So I think what you're sharing is so great, because there are definitely techniques when you're in it or after it's happened that really, really help. And actually the prevention is to actually make them part of your everyday life,
Well,
because
exactly.
you're finding embodiment. But there's something as well I wanted to share, is that one thing I find when you said the don't think, I think it's so, like, literally we should just put that on a mug. Don't think yourself out of RSD, because the thing that really works for me, and it happened to me this morning, I have to get out, don't think, just go, just do, and get out in nature. I went out on a quick jog, but that can be a walk. And then I had boxing because I had it booked already anyway. But for me, it is just go. Don't think about this anymore because you're overthinking already.
And
Get
you
out,
won't do
move your
it,
body, get
probably.
in nature, and just, yes, I had to blare loads of loud music this morning, and it was like, get out. And that so quickly can then turn that around for me. And next thing I'm really
Exactly.
happy again. The highs and the lows,
Oh
like,
yeah,
which I love.
wonderful. Because you got some endorphins out of that, and you got your dopamine out of that. You got some serotonin to balance things out. You got loads of things going on in your brain that are just positive, and your gut microbes benefit from the exercise as well. So there's a lot of activity in the gut as well. There's more blood flow to the brain, more oxygen in your lungs and in
There
the
we
brain.
go.
There's a lot that is going on. And if you actually start thinking about it and you're not in the right frame of mind, or something's going on in your life, you probably stop yourself from doing it because you think, oh, I can find a reason to actually stay at my computer doing something, especially if
Yeah.
you're
And then
doing this
react
kind
to
of
the
thing.
thing. Exactly. And I
Yeah,
think if you don't go out and
exactly.
move your body, if you don't move your body in that moment and you continue to think about it, which I was thinking about this thing this morning, the way that's going to come out is I'm going to react, whether I'm going to be like people please it or I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to react in impulsively moment, like emotionally, instead of if I get out and actually coach myself through it while I'm walking or running, then you're going to react in a better way, aren't you?
Yeah, and another thing that I think is quite important is like nobody's going to come and rescue you. Nobody's
No,
going to come and no technique, no Pomodoro thing, no,
no,
whatever it is not going to sort out your life. You know, what's going to sort out your life is you becoming aware of your patterns and then
definitely.
deciding to do something about them, as opposed to trying to
Yes.
just like think.
Not do anything. And that's the thing. And that's
Yeah,
empowering though. That's that people listening, some people, and I know I have it with my clients at first, when they first start coaching, because coaching is very much about doing, like they get scared about that. And I think that makes them not scared, but it's sort of like, oh, but I have to do something, or it's not, so no one is going to save me. And this one technique isn't going to save my life and change everything. But there's a lot of agency and empowerment in that, and take that as a real positive that you have the power. Like no one is coming to save you, but wow, that means the freedom is within you to actually change what's going on in your life and
absolutely.
actually
Yeah.
work with your amazing brain. That's actually a real positive, what you've just said there. Like no one is coming to save us, but thank God they're not, because that means we're in control of what happens next.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think our self-awareness and a little bit of self-kindness. So when we are aware of things and we're not completely happy about them, we can soothe ourselves by saying, you know what, it's fine. It wasn't exactly as I wanted it to happen, but I'll have another opportunity for it to happen and for me to react in a different way. And then
Exactly.
I'll learn from that and I'll start becoming more the person that in my head I am. So I
Mm,
can become more aligned with that person that I think I am, or that person that I would like to be. Maybe I'm not close to that person, but I would like to be more like this person in my head that is kinder and does more exercise and eats better and is popular with people and has a relationship and whatever it is that you want in your life, you can identify
yeah.
patterns that may be blockers, and
Yes, yeah.
it's not going to happen overnight, but that's what life is about. It'd be really boring if it just all happened overnight and you
Yeah, if
didn't
ever it
have
was
to work
perfect.
for everything. Yeah,
Exactly. I always say
exactly.
like everything that's worth it or meaningful is always comes with like it never comes easy. There's always be work and adaptations. And I also want to caveat what I said. Like I went out for a run today and got out, but that doesn't mean it's easy. And I always make that right decision, because often I've made the opposite decision, which I feel is wrong in that moment. And I have stayed on the laptop and reacted and signed up to things and said, I'll do these things just to make myself feel safer. So it's not always easy to choose, that option in that moment, but that's fine. But it's
Exactly.
when you do celebrate the wins no matter what you decide to do in that moment. Because at the end of the day, scientifically, what you've just said, we are going through something quite enhanced. And however you need to feel safe in that moment, you've done the best you can in that moment with what you know and how you can handle it. And I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? Like that kindness for yourself is, yeah, it might not be how you wanted to react in that moment, but you did your best. And practicing that future thinking of who is the version of me I want to be more like or become more of myself, and what step can I take today or the next time that happens to bring me closer to it. And it's as simple as that, isn't it? Like, you're not perfect. We're not perfect, and we're just trying our best.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a nice way to end the episode. Actually.
Yeah. I've got one quote that Brené Brown said the other day. Well, she said it ages ago, but I found it, and I just wanted to end on this actually and see what you think. It says, true belonging doesn't require that we change who we are. It requires that we be who we are.
Absolutely. And I think that we could go all over the fawning thing again with that, but we won't. And I think you'll need to put that in the episode notes. If you're looking for the definition of fawning, please fast forward to minute 52.
Thank you so much for joining me on the ADHD Untangled podcast. I hope that these episodes are inspiring you to step forward with confidence despite the struggles that you face with ADHD. If you want to find out more about ADHD coaching, retreats, trainings, then check out my Instagram, ADHD_untangled, or my website, untangledco.com. Let's get untangled and show the world what we are made of.